Relationship management is the key to unlocking your destiny. During the series entitled After I Did, Pastor Wayne Powell Sr. explores the connection between the quality of our life experiences and our relationship.
Welcome back, everybody, for another week of Relationship Wednesday. So hopefully y'all been enjoying the content thus far. We're gonna continue in answering your questions, and so we got a couple more questions to finish out this segment of just Q&A. And so we thank you for the questions that you sent thus far. It's been helpful because I feel like if you can send us questions, and we can better be able to serve and help. And then also we'll have a thing where well, even when normally what I will be doing is theming, putting a theme for each month for Relationship Wednesday. And so, but the more I know what your felt needs are out there, then I would be able to better know how to theme and hit certain, target certain contents per month. So your feedback is very helpful to being able to know how to theme certain months in talking about different things, just to really help, just to better serve. Because again, the more we understand what you need, the better we'll be able to serve. All right. So, and again, remember, Relationship Wins After I Did is to help people through navigating relationships battles. All right. So let's get back into it. Question. So we have 7 questions altogether. So we have 2 more questions to go. So number 6 is, if a spouse is not a communicator, how can the marriage survive? Now, this is a good question, and of course, you want to be able to have communication. So again, there's always a backstory to these type of questions, meaning that this question would be easier one side if somebody just getting married communicating versus somebody who been through hurt and you're trying to talk through things communication like this. So there's a lot of different scenarios in communication. So when we say if a spouse is not a communicator, how can the marriage survive? So basically saying, what is the objective of the communication? So when we say communication, because they are communicating, but sometimes the communication isn't what you're looking for. But that doesn't mean they're not communicating, because we all communicate. Like Michelle, I may not say nothing, but she's like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, "I ain't saying nothing." She said, "I see it all in your eyes. I see it in your face." So in other words, I'm communicating. She just says she understands my language. So same thing with Michelle. I know there's moments where something could be bothering her. She's communicating. That's what I'm saying. And then sometimes, we're at a place where we're not ready to talk it out, because sometimes you can be so in your emotions where I really want to have a logical conversation, but I can't right now because my emotions are at its peak right now. So if I try to talk to you about it, it's just gonna make it worse, because I'm just not in emotional space yet to have the conversation, right? So now when we're talking about how can the marriage survive, so when you're saying we're to the point where, so to me, this lets me know that there is something deeper going on for us to say us not talking, or we are communicating, but whatever the level of communication is going, is basically saying the marriage could be over because, there's no communication, which means that both people are talking, we just not talking the language. We just not picking up on what they're saying. So a lot of times that's because we're, just not aware of different things. So, and so they say, well, how can the marriage survive? And I would say this. You said the way you phrase this question, it sounds pretty desperate, in the sense of like, if a spouse is not, I'm just reading how it's, I guess I'm communicating in my way, how I feel like you communicate the question. If a spouse is not a communicator, but that's in that one statement, that's not true. Everybody communicates. So that already lets me know that whatever you're looking for, it's not satisfactory to your standards. So that's why now it brings to a place of frustration. It sounds like the last part of the question is, how can the marriage survive? Like that sounds like more of a frustration with the communication. So I just want to say, Michelle, if you want to add anything before I go down these rabbit trails on this.
Well, as you said, everybody communicates. You just have to figure out how to hear what that person is communicating. I mean, I'll give you a case in point, like with animals. A lot of people can if you could communicate with an animal who does not talk, like we talk, but you know what they're saying. If you find out how dogs work, how cats work, whatever, I know if my cat does something out of the ordinary, they're communicating to me that there's something wrong. So it's my job to find out what that cat is saying or that dog is saying. So same thing, not that I'm putting anybody in animal, but it's the same thing with a spouse. Everybody communicates differently. Some people talk more than others. Some people are just quiet, maybe shy or whatever. But everybody is communicating in their own way. And you just have to, if you study that person enough, especially if it's your spouse or something, like he said, he don't have to say a word. He can come in. If he's upset, I can tell. I can just see it. I've been with him, 23 years now. So it's like, I know when he's upset. Even if you say I'm not, I'm like, you can't tell me. I'm watching it. You just wear it all over you. So it's like, and then finally, he's just not ready to talk about it maybe. But then finally he'll say, okay, well, yeah, because I knew something was wrong. So you basically have to find out what that person is saying in their way. And then, ease them into being able to talk it out. And sometimes they don't communicate with you because you don't make it easy. Because if you don't make it easy on somebody to say something to you because they think they're going to get their head chopped off, then who wants to talk to somebody who feel like they're going to get their head chopped off? So sometimes it's you. You got to look at what am I doing that I can't, my spouse doesn't feel comfortable enough to come to me. So, and that's how, even with our children, it's like we try to always make it where our children feel like they could come to us with anything. But the minute they come to us and we're like, and you make a big deal, they're not going to come to you anymore because now you have scared them into, oh my gosh, they might flip off or whatever. So you have to keep your emotions in check and make it easy for someone to talk to you.
Yeah, so I was actually thinking that while Michelle, did she hit the nail on the head? Because yes, the second point was to answer this question is, are you a safe person to talk to?
Right.
And because again, a lot of times when there's a lack of communication, usually the person who wants the communication have not become a safe place. And then now, usually if we tell this person this, then usually they're the ones upset, but you're making the point.
Right.
It's almost like if you're mad at me telling you this, that already tells me you're not you never created a safe space by where the marriage can have open dialogue. And so, and there's reasons for that. One reason could be expectations that were unrealistic. Another reason could be just too judgmental. In other words, you're just too hardcore. Like for some reason, you feel like you glow in the dark, but everybody else,
right.
Doesn't. So you feel like you have a right to question and judge, those type of things. So expectations would be, I expected these things from you, so I'm ready to attack because I'm hurt by your responses and stuff like that. So, and when you get married, we needed to be able to be open with the idea that everybody's going to come into the marriage with weaknesses. But a lot of times, because we have, and usually this is what happens, and this is what I found, is that one of the reasons why we don't make it a safe space because we project on others we expect of ourselves. And that's what I meant by being self-aware in the last one. So in other words, if I demand perfection from myself, which is actually another form of low self-esteem. A lot of people don't even realize that perfection is a symptom of low self-esteem. And so when you chase perfection, you actually work from low self-esteem, and so now you acquire everybody else to be perfect around you. So now it's like I can't. So the minute somebody communicates in something that don't tell me that my perfection isn't perfect, then I'm mad and I shut down and I get all upset. And then I say, well, why won't you talk to me? Because you're not making it safe. And usually most people will go talk to people who they feel like it's safe to talk to. So in other words, and we're not talking about people who agree. In other words, we don't have to agree. Right. To feel safe, but I still should be able to feel safe in talking to you.
Right.
But a lot of times I let my hurts. How dare you? You're like it's almost like I want you to talk to me, but then I'm always making it very unsafe to talk to, for whatever reason or another. So that person who talks to everybody say, you know what? It's like whenever I talk to you, it's just not safe. So I don't know what to say. I'd rather just say nothing, because it's almost like everything's a ticking time bomb. But it's like, but why don't you talk to me? Because that person doesn't want to communicate under those terms, you know. Mm-hmm. So when I want to work, like when you go to a job, I don't want to work under these terms and conditions. Like when I go into a contract, you want to work under certain terms and contracts. In other words, if we're going to have the terms of agreement of communication, like these terms you operate under, I don't operate, so I'm not talking until the terms and conditions are more favorable for both of us to have, healthy dialogue, to be able to talk through our differences, our weaknesses, our strengths, whatever they may be. And a lot of times and then what happens is we get mad because from the other person, when you talk to people who I want you to be for me versus talking to them based off accepting of who they are and being more compassionate. But again, a lot of times the reason why you're not like that, because God says, if you're like that towards your brother, meaning like horizontal relationships, somewhere between you and God, you think that God holds that same thing over you. So meaning that the way I deal with people, a lot of times somewhere in your God theology, you think that God deals with you the same way. Mm-hmm. And usually, like, again, one of the symptoms of low self-esteem is perfection. It's like I chase perfection to make up for things where I feel like I'm not good enough. And then when I feel like the person who's talking to me don't make me feel like I'm good enough, then it creates the attack mode, because I'm not hearing what you're saying. My hearing is your communication tells me that I'm not good enough. So now I attack. And so sometimes when people want communication, it's like you want them to say something so you can attack, but then that's not communication. Because like Michelle was saying, communication is somebody who it's like you're not taking what people are saying as personal, and meaning that you don't take the offense. Like you're not mad at them for their thoughts and opinions. It's just something you have to work through. Like so in a sense, so they shouldn't be mad about how you think, but you can be mad about how they think, so that's the whole thing, where in communication is really about the attitudes and the perspectives of the person. And so what happens is in a marriage, communication always works off of, I talked about before, treasure in the field. When you see the person the right way, you can have good communication. A lot of times, the reason why communication is not healthy, because the perception of the person is not healthy. Once the perception of the person is right, then the communication is going to be right. Because you cannot, as that's what I've learned, your tone and how you talk to people are always going to be reflective of how you see them. You can never talk something different outside of how you see them. All right, so you want to add something to that before we go into the next one?
No, I'm good.
All right, so now, and this goes back, which I feel like feeds off, like these both feed the same vein. When a spouse, this is question number 7, when a spouse thinks communication is usually an argument, what can one do when the other spouse wants to talk about things and the spouse who is not willing to talk shuts down? And I feel like we just answered that question, from the other thing. And I'm saying, to me, it's hard, because again, what really has to happen is we got to bring the perception back. Because if the perception isn't right, the communication is not right. So I want to read this to you real quick. And that's something that and I feel like with the last 2 questions, I'm going to use it really more of a little bit of a Bible study moment. And so how much time I got? All right, I have, so, we put ourselves on timers here because I want to keep it, short and sweet and to the point. So I'll have, a few more minutes here with you. I just want to say this to you this is about the woman at the well. And I spoke a little bit about this today at a church in service, but I want you to see this. And so this is a case of perceptions, communication, spiritual needs, all that type of thing. Like this, I really feel like wraps all these, questions up into this point. So it says, therefore, when the Lord knew that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus made and baptized more disciples than John, And Jesus himself did not baptize. He left Judea and departed again to Galilee, but he needed to go through Samaria. So he came to a city of Samaria, which is called, Sychar, near the plot of the ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Now Jacob's well was there. Jesus, therefore, being wearied from his journey, sat thus by the well. It was about the 6th hour. And so this is like 6 hours, meaning like this is the afternoon, like around lunchtime. And so a woman in Samaria came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." So a woman in Samaria came to draw water. Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." For his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. They were going to buy lunch. So then the woman of Samaria said to him, "How is it that you, being a Jew, ask a drink from me, a Samaritan woman? For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans." Now, okay, so Samaritans and Jews, they had their issues going, right? But you notice how Jesus asked for a drink, but her perception of Jesus created a breakdown in communication. Right there. So in other words, how are you going to ask me for a drink when, we ain't vibing that way, Jews and Samaritans? So in other words, my perception is already creating a rift in the communication.
Right.
And then the woman said to him, "Sir," "you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where then do you get that living water?" Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. I skipped some things. Verse 10. Excuse me. So let me go back. Let me go back so you can follow me. Then the woman said to Samaria, "How is it you, being a Jew, ask for a drink from me, Samaritan woman? For the Jews have no dealing with Samaritans." Jesus answered and said to her, If you knew the gift of God and who it is who says to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." See, now he's working on the who. See, so in other words, the communication. So now we're talking about living water, meaning spiritual water versus physical water. And now look what he says. And the woman said to him, "Sir, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where then do you get that living water?" So now, see, communication. So he's basically talking about spiritual things. She talking about natural things. And this is a breakdown all because the who isn't right. And then it says, "Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us this well and drank from himself, and it was his sons and his livestock?" So if you understood the whole context, basically she was getting smart with Jesus. Basically, she was saying, "Who you think you are, asking me all this whole living water?" So in other words, she's misunderstanding. She's mishearing because she's hearing it through the lens of Jews don't like Samaritans. So once the perception was there, the way Jesus was talking to her, all the communication got totally distorted. And then it says, Jesus answered said, "Whoever drinks this water will thirst again, but whoever drinks the water that I shall give him will never thirst. But the water that I shall give him will become in him a fountain of water springing up in everlasting." So now Jesus is defining what he's saying. He's breaking down where he's coming from. And this woman said to him, "Give me this water that I may not thirst, nor come here to draw." So in a sense, she's kind of being smart with it. So then Jesus basically said, "Okay, now, since you want to continue to antagonize me when I'm trying to help you and all that kind of stuff, let's work on your who real quick. Let's work." He said, clearly the communication ain't getting through because the perception of me isn't right yet. So then he says to him, Jesus said, "Go call your husband and come here." So he said, Jesus, "Okay, now I'm going to show you who I am." The woman answered said, "I have no husband." Jesus said to her, "Right, you have said, well, you don't got no husband. For you have 5 husbands. You have had 5 husbands. And the one you now with is not even your own. That's not your husband. In that you spoke truly." And the woman said to him, "Sir, I perceive you that you are a prophet." Perception changed. Now the communication makes sense. And he says, "I follow worship on this mountain, and Jews say that in Jerusalem, in this place we will one night to worship." And the woman said to her, "Believe me, this hour is coming when neither Son of Man mountain Jerusalem worshiping this." Then he goes into the whole thing, worship for salvation, for hours coming, the whole thing. And then so after the whole conversation, bottom line was, and I'm verse 28. The woman left her water pot, went her way into the city, and said to the men, "Come see a man who told me all these things that I ever did, and could be the Christ." And they went out so that was the whole thing. My point I'm making is that A lot of times our communication is bad because our character perception of them is bad. And a lot of times we're trying to fix communication without fixing the perception. Because if I see you as a person that is not for me and who is against me, it controls my tone. If you know, look at it. She said, you Jews don't like us. So everything Jesus said in his communication was misunderstood and could never get across right. But once he perceived her as, oh, wow, he's actually for us. And this is the one, now she was excited. She received everything. The communication got better. So a lot of times, that's why we have to realize, that's why Paul said, regard no man after the flesh. He's not saying that we're not aware people have done, but Paul is saying is, if you want to be effective with people, you got to know people by the Spirit, not by their actions. Because if I'm going to ever truly have proper communication with you and be able to walk things out properly, I got to see you right. But the day I see you according to your actions and see you according to your dirt, it will control the communication, and they will never have good communication.
Right.
Because your issue will always dictate the way I talk to you. I'm trying to tell you, there's some people, we feel like they try to take advantage of us. I'm trying to tell you, it just controls the way we talk. It just controls the way I even hear what they say. Mm-hmm. Because I feel like, oh, you ain't calling because you really checking on me. You call because you want some money. Right? So in the communication, how I'm perceiving you always dictating how I'm hearing what you're saying. So a lot of times we try to clean up the communication. If you clear up the identity and the perception, and I can see you through the eyes of God, then we can have better communication. But as long as I see you in a certain way, I regard you according to this thing, I'll never be able to talk to you. That's why God said he always, why we were yet sinners, he loved us. In other words, he saw what we could be. That's why he still loved us, because he didn't see the sinner in us. He saw the sonship in us. And that's why he was able to love us even while we were yet sinners. So you want to add anything to that?
Not really. You said it all.
I felt like I did.
Yeah, you really did.
But just saying, but just the perception thing, right?
Yeah, definitely perception. Yeah, if you don't see someone, if you don't see someone in the right light, you're definitely, everything that comes out of their mouth, you're seeing it as a lie. You're seeing it as you're just out to get me, or you just, like you said, you just want money, or, just everything. And the world knows this. The world knows this. They throw stuff out there and, put perceptions out of stuff. But yeah, so if you see your husband or your wife in a bad light and continue to see them in a bad light, and you can't see them as a man or woman of God, it's going to be very hard for you to hear good.
Right, yeah, basically, like in my mind, you don't care about me. You don't like,
right,
but
yeah.
like if that's running in my head, then even though I'm hearing you talk, it's going to still dictate.
Right.
And so sometimes if you're going to have the restoration of a relationship, you're going to have, that's where God comes in. You're going to have to, by faith, allow God to help you see them in the right light. Because if you don't, then there's no way the communication can be right. And it's not the communication is the problem. It is the way I perceive you is disrupting the communication. So if I can see you as a loving person and the person's for me, then therefore we'll never have healthy communication. It'll never happen until that happens. And that's what it showed here in the text where we show with Jesus, her interact with the Samaritan woman.
And also you have to realize that you have God speaking to you and you have the devil speaking to you. You got to figure out who am I listening to? But if you know God's word and you know God's character and everything, you should know who's talking to you. So if you're listening to negativity and oh, that person did this, or remember what that person did, or such, you're listening to the devil, first of all. So listen to what God has to say. If you listen to the devil, then it's going to be really hard for you to see the good in anybody if you're listening to the wrong person.
Yeah, so I'll say this, and I guess working with a lot of different relationships over the years, I'll come to find this common denominator, and I saw it. Once the woman saw the man as a monster, like he would try to do nice things, but it always got filtrated, like, no, you a monster, like you ain't buy me these flowers, like you up to something, like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. It just doesn't work. And then if the man sees the woman as like you full of drama, like you always full of this and that, I'm trying to tell you, it's like once that happens. So my whole thing is this: In some cases, people have really become that. But my whole thing is like, you know, so wow, I guess give a couple more minutes, we're gonna finish it out. So I say is this. It's like, it's so wild how the people we fell in love with all of a sudden are like the worst things. It's like that whole thing. It's the thin line. It's the thin line between love and hate. You know what I'm saying? That's my little song right there. Because I see it's like the way I love you so much, I can hate you at that same intensity. Because I gave you my heart. And so because it hurt on that same level, I can hate you on that level. So in other words, I loved you the way I perceived you, but because of that action, now I see you as an evil demon in the same intensity as I saw you as this great person. So it's a thin line. Reason why? Because of that thing. And so my whole thing is that it's so wild how we can, you know, that happens to us, people close to where in one moment we're the greatest people, but then where we turn into the worst of enemies, and where it's like, and so my whole thing, you know, where we can just be so against each other. So I would say this to you, this to those, you know, situations is this. It's to me, and here's the hard choice. If the identity can't be restored in the relationship, the perception, any relationship, whether it be marriage, friendships, whatever, it won't make it. So it's like you have to be real with yourself to say, if I want this marriage to make it or this relationship to make it, then I'm going to have to perceive you. Like God has to grace me to perceive you the way He is gracing me to perceive you. But if that's not there, I don't care what you do, how well you try to communicate. As long as I see you through the eyes of your issues and what you did to me and how you hurt me and how it's not going to work. Because perception drives everything. You receive and how you perceive. See, in other words, receive communication through how I perceive. So once I perceive right, then I'll receive right. And so now, and say, well, how you do that? See, this is where we got to break self-righteousness. When you operate, people who operate in unforgiveness can never perceive a person right. See, a lot of people think that I forgive you because I'm not mad with you and I can still do no. But unforgiveness, another type of unforgiveness is, and you haven't forgiven them yet, it's because I still see you as this evil person. So in other words, forgiveness says you're a good person, you just have an issue you're working through. But unforgiveness says not only did you do bad things, but you're a bad person. Right. So that's what unforgiveness says. I still label you this according to your action. And so now what happens is, if you want to get the perception of them back right in order, you have to forgive. Like, even I'll give you a case in point. John the Baptist. Remember we talked about that a while back where Jesus didn't come see John, and John was offended because he pretty much on death row and he thinking Jesus gonna come get him out. And what did he say? Go ask him, is he the one? See, once he got offended, he's questioning who he is. Mm-hmm. So as long as he was in offense, he was questioning the identity. So what Jesus did, he in his loving way, he basically said, no, I am who you say I am. In other words, he was the one that put him on to have all that. But once he got offended, all of a sudden, the way I perceive you is different, because that offense is now driving the identity. So now what happens is, if I want to get my perception of you back, that's why Jesus said, blessed is he who is not offended at me, which means that if you want to still receive from my gift, you got to perceive me right and not allow the action to now change your opinion of me because it didn't fit your expectation. And so, and I'm gonna tell you, only people who struggle with unforgiveness are self-righteous people. So that's the reality of it. See, you may not think you're self-righteous, but you're holding on to offense shows you that you still operate in a high level of self-righteousness. People who understand that they are forgiven, not based on their goodness, but on God, those are the ones who know how to forgive. That's why Jesus said, people who think that, he even talked about it, he said, people who think that they're worthy. This way he put it. He put in two different texts. He said, those who know that they've been forgiven for much extend much grace. Those who don't think they have to be forgiven for much extend very little grace. Because on the level I feel like I'm right, and I feel like I have a right to hold it, then therefore and that's the thing. So when you get into those things, so meaning that forgiveness and getting out of the offense is all about getting our perceptions back. And once you do that, then you can begin to now, see healing there. But as long as my offense and my unforgiveness is holding your identity hostage, there can be no healthy communication. So you want to say something?
Nope, I'm good.
That's good.
Yes.
All right. Well, that was some happy stuff, some little, tougher things to deal with there. But that's a lot of times the stuff they have to deal with in order to have effective communication. So, from my mind, hopefully, I believe it was helpful to you. Hopefully these things can give you some tools, some things to think about, perspectives and all those type of things. And I just trust that the Lord will give you the wisdom and the grace to be able to figure out how to, navigate these things and walk these things out. All right. Well, God bless you. We'll see you on the next podcast and have a blessed week.
Thank you for joining Pastor Wayne Powell Sr. for this edition of Relationship Wednesday. We hope you enjoyed this episode of After I Did. Let's keep the conversation going by leaving your questions and comments in the chat. We also invite you to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And don't forget to click the notification bell so you are reminded to join us next Wednesday as Pastor Wayne continues this discussion of After I Did.